beast, mask of the beast. It's the mask of the beast, mask of the beast. Faceless cock, another NPC. Oh, I think they made a typo, just like Tuttle Bottle, but the R is the S. Double E, yeah. Whoa, wow, whoa, wow, whoa, wow, whoa, wow. WWWWWF. Now you're out of breath. It's the mask of the beast, 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 faceless cock, another NPC.
Alright, that's Mask of the Beast by Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms. Tonight is November the 28th. 1984. Thank you for joining us here at the Infinite Plane Radio Red Pill Factory, where we are unmasked, unvaxxed, uncensored. Number here, 833-311-1984. I will also be playing your voicemail, so those of you who've been calling in and leaving voicemails. So let's go ahead and start with the first voicemail of the night. Might be a voice female. Don't mean to assume anyone's gender. Here we go.
Hey Tim, this is K-Dub. I wanted to know if you heard about Donald Trump's executive order 13598, aka the 1776 Commission. I think you should take a look at it. Thanks.
The 1776 Commission. I will look into it. Has anybody seen Executive Order 1368? Now, I have seen that on signage. I've seen it at various protest events. So it must be something. And someone else had emailed me about Trump today. They asked me why I haven't addressed him being a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Mason. And he sent that with a wink, as though I'm covering up for Trump. If Trump's a 33rd degree Mason, I have no direct knowledge of it. I would assume he's at a minimum initiated into the pizza club or something. I mean, isn't that how you get in? But no, I don't know for sure. And for all we know, pizza just might be a euphemism for worms. People assume the worst. Oh, they're eating babies, they're drinking blood. Maybe they're just a bunch of, kind of outliers, and they all enjoy eating bugs. And they're compromised, mutually compromised, because they're all on tape, the Clintons, the Trumps, the Obamas, with mouths full of who knows what, roaches, squiggly worms. It could be even something even more disgusting than that. Phones are open, 833-311-1984. I realize they were closed the last couple of days, but we have fixed that issue. A shout out to Go Find the Others. And also the text message alerts are open again as well. So if anybody is wanting to receive text message alerts, you can get those as well. Now let's see. I have not heard of Trump's executive order, the 1776 thing. Sounds interesting. Now look, whatever you think about QAnon, or for that matter, Alex Jones, or any of these things, you have so many people who are painted with broad brushes because of the sources of information. But I get my information from everywhere. So I'm not a Foxanon just because I listen to a few stories from a certain person at Fox. So it's too easy to demonize people. And I do find that that particular research community that gathers around this concept of Q, they do tend to find a lot of good information more often than not. But I did come across something I wanted to point out that does seem to be indicative of us being correct again with this metascript concept, this post-media critique, and the way we have been laying things out on a timeline. And so if you've seen the mind map we worked on this summer, you'll know what I'm talking about. But essentially, we put things out on a timeline over the last century, maybe 115 years, the most important, the most transformative psychological operations. We put them on a timeline, and we're just looking at how everything does seem to be planned. So here's something I wanted to point out to you. It has to do with the Kraken. So you're all familiar with the meme, Release the Kraken, having to do with Sidney Powell and the election results. So of course, two things. One, this positively connects the term Kraken with November the 3rd because it's about the election. Well, leading up to this, in fact, 4 months ago, the Seattle Kraken released a trailer. And the Seattle Kraken is the 32nd hockey team. So the National Hockey League has its 32nd team called the Seattle Kraken. So they released a trailer. And this trailer seemed like more of the same predictive programming. Because again, the trailer is 1 minute, 13 seconds, 113. So you have a connection here. Kraken, 113. Only in this instance, the Kraken looks to be some kind of a tsunami, perhaps even EMP. So there's other things indicated here, but it could all be symbolic. And so I thought, well, Kraken could be symbolic of something else, like a crack, something that creates a big rift leading up to a civil war. And so what could be more of a Kraken than a disputed election? I mean, a real Kraken would be uniting. People would get together to defeat it or whatever. But in this case, no, I think that this might just be forecasting. So now looking at the date, July 23rd, 2020, this is from Seattle Kraken. It says, some say we know about the cosmos, then we do our own waters. Maybe that's what draws us up to the sea. The vast expanse, the impermeable deep, the uncharted has long inspired generations of folklore. Now we breathe life into a new legend. An ancient and powerful force reawakens in the heart of the Pacific Northwest. We will wear the S in honor of our champion predecessors, and we will have a name that incarnates the might of the sea, the Seattle Kraken. So this is their video. So the term Kraken, release the Kraken, was already out there being more or less force memed into the mass consciousness. And again, I'm just pointing it out. We had that as a significant meme to be focused on come November the 3rd. Okay, here's something else to pay attention to. Those of you who have been following this channel know we follow the drama around the space program. So for anyone who has any trouble accepting the existence of conspiracies that take generations to complete, they happen. And some people find that hard to believe, that somebody would devote themselves to something which wouldn't be completed in their own lifetime. So I want to point out as an example that these things do happen. I want to point out the space program. Because if you look at the space program, you're not looking at real events. You're looking at scripted, staged, fake events. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey Tim, how you doing? This is Respike Phenom, and I just had my channel taken down for the fifth time.
Oh, what is your channel? I didn't catch that. What's the actual channel name?
Respike Phenom. I'm a flat Earth channel, but I keep on getting taken down for talking about COVID-19. I just want to know something. From what I gather, you're the only person that has actually sued YouTube and won. How did you go about it exactly?
Good question. When you sign up for YouTube, you actually sign an agreement that you will only sue them in Santa Clara. I say F that, sue them locally in small court, because what it'll do, it'll get dismissed more than likely, but in the meantime, their attorneys will call you. And that's what happened to me. And once I got on the phone with them, I straightened out the issue and I said, hey, look, people are abusing your flagging system to take my channel down. And by the time it actually got to the court, we had settled it. because it was going to have to be rescheduled for Santa Clara. But I just didn't waste any time. I just went downtown and turned on the process. And you can just do it all by e-filing these days.
All right, thanks. I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, go after them because they suck. I mean, we all know this. Thank you. All right,
man. Take it easy, bro. Bye.
Okay, so what he's referring to is, yes, I had to file a suit in order to get their attention because it was insane. You realize that this is the 86th YouTube channel. If you're listening on YouTube, you're listening on channel 84, 85, or 86. So we've literally been 86 from the channel that many times. 86. So what happened is I ended up having to sue them in small claims because a few different reasons. And it had to do with this. I figured if they're going to give somebody else rights over my content, as in if somebody files a copyright claim and YouTube sides with them for more than a year straight, causing me to consistently lose channels, and that's what they did. I assumed, I'm like, well then I guess they're a part of it. So they're a party to the infringement. So I was actually suing them for copyright infringement. And once I got into a dialogue with their attorney, they saw the loophole, and right after this, I dropped it. So I didn't want to follow through with it and go through all the trouble. But right after, they changed their policy. They made the first update in more than 10 years to their strike policy, which is now your first strike is a warning. It's not immediate demonetization. Because I stupidly tried to make a living by living off of YouTube for a long time. And not a long time, but I tried to make a living off Super Chat and thinking you could just do that. And you can't. Unless you're just extremely mainstream. And even then, it's very, very questionable. Commenter says, sketchy call. Define sketchy. Define sketchy. I don't really know. I mean, he did give us his YouTube channel. I'm not really sure if I've listened to that particular channel. I don't keep up with many. I keep up with Flathead Politics. He's always giving the best debunks of the ISS. I keep up with all the Flat Earth related music channels. I don't know who else is still out there. I've been following up with Flat Earth F Word, who, as you know, went to jail briefly for this contravening the Quarantine Act. In fact, he was recently interviewed by Raw Media, which is kind of a big deal because Raw Media isn't MSM. You know, they may not be 100% red-pilled or whatever, but the thing is, let me go ahead and bring them up. It's actually, I think it's Raw News, but they basically said even flat earthers have rights. You know, that's kind of their take on it, that even if you think the earth is flat, you still deserve to be heard and interviewed objectively, and that's what they did. And normally that's not the case, as you know. The term flat earther is actually an invented pejorative. You know, no group of flat earthers ever ran up to Christopher Columbus and said, you know, telling him don't go over the edge. That never actually happened. That's kind of made up history, and it's kind of funny they finally admitted it was made up history. Commenter says he sounds like he was wearing a mask. Oh, the last caller, he may have been wearing a mask. He may have been at work. I'm not right now, but soon. I mean, soon it won't be possible not to. Isn't it crazy how they just make it compulsory? They're like, yeah, you have to wear a mask indoors if somebody you don't know is coming over. And I'm afraid that the DoorDash will snitch on me if I answer the door without a mask. So I don't even open the door all the way. I just barely open it like 2 inches and I reach my arm out. Because they might snitch. Like they probably have something in their app. Oh, was the customer wearing a mask in their house? How many people are in the house? Who knows what they're doing? Echo Charlie says, I wish you would interview the Edge from U2. You think he's been there? Okay, so on the screen, you're looking at, this is what I'm trying to get to. I'm looking at the current astronauts on the ISS. This is what I was talking about. I was bringing this up as an evidence of conspiracies that take generations, and proof that they actually happen. So we know nobody went to the moon. Nobody went and made a space station. Nobody's going to Mars. But this is a story. It's a big production. It's a psychological operation that's been carried out over generations. So there you have it. You have a conspiracy. You have a false news story that's being promulgated over many, many years. And the people who founded the space station, the science fiction guy with his satanic boyfriend, rocket scientist, and their shared girlfriend, the movie star Marjorie Cameron, the ones who were trying to conceive the Antichrist in the Babylon working. From that time forward, it's all just been a bunch of actors, and they knew they would never see the end of it, I'm sure. Neil Armstrong knew he wouldn't see Mars, but he knew he was part of a staged event, a series of staged events that would take place for generations. So in context, I've been looking at these various events that NASA stages, not just the landings, but the very dramatic explosions. And these are sacrifices, human sacrifices. Now, they're not real deaths, but that doesn't change the fact that these are indeed human sacrifices. So if we start with the Apollo 11 human sacrifice, Apollo 1, where they burned on the launch pad, that precedes Apollo 11. But before Apollo 1, the first man in space, Yuri Gagarin, he had a fiery death. So you got a lot of fiery deaths, and that's the pattern here. Fiery death, first man in space. Apollo 1, fiery death. Challenger 7, fiery deaths. Not only that, but these are also happening on anniversary dates, which is also very, very peculiar, which we can get into. But what I'm suggesting here is that I think we're due for another fiery event. And here's why. Each one of the preceding ones in this story happened before a major leap forward in space exploration. So the first one, the very first one, man goes into space and then later ends up blowing up, burns up. This is before they go to the moon. The second one's, these are all just preceding major leaps. So you have the leap from to space, to the moon, low Earth orbit. Now we're at the stage where we're about to go into colonization. Lunar colonization, Mars. Maybe you might go to an asteroid to go mine inside of it. But I think before we get to that stage, the pattern is some type of immolation. So what's more, because again, I'm just going off of their patterns. And these patterns are astrological, and they are based on anniversaries. So the pattern here, of course, is pointing at the ISS, which has to go down anyway because the special effects are outdated. They're still using green screen. The new way of faking space involves LED screens, high def, surrounding you all around. It's not the same as green screen, and it won't be easy to see that it's faked. So, we can laugh at the ISS blooper reel all we want, but it's about to be upgraded. So here we are to the present. So last January, the third week of January, we were watching the skies for a fiery explosion because we figured, well, it's about time. Same week as the Challenger explosion, you had the Kobe Bryant explosion. And you know what they actually did is they did blow up the Falcon 9. And they called it a sacrifice. And you can look it up. Elon Musk said, we are going to sacrifice the Falcon to the Dragon. So they talk in these terms. They speak in these terms where they're giving us the story. And then we have the drama where they actually had a fiery explosion in the sky with a couple effigies inside of the capsule. So they were effigies. They had dummies in the thing, which I think is also very interesting when you consider the significance of the Burning Man Festival and the destruction of effigies. So now, I'm looking at the space station and I'm realizing, well, they put 7 people in there. So I'm not sure if we've seen 7 before since the challenge in the space station. Usually it's only 6, but anyway, I'm looking at it and it seems to be a demographic match with the Challenger event. And and what I mean is same number of male, female, same racial breakdown. It just seems like this is a demographic match for the Challenger. So I've been digging into the previous space station which fell, the Mir station, and that happened to fall 41 years ago. It'll be 42 years as of 2021. And those of you who follow this channel know that we have analyzed these space program rituals for so long, you can't help but notice that SpaceX's entire story is connected with the number 42 in one way or another. They integrate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the number 42. So here's where it all ties together. The number 42 has to do with falling. That's the long and short of it. And the New Age religion I was talking about, JPL's, Jack Parsons, and L. Ron Hubbard, they renamed for the New Age religion. They renamed the goddess of the night sky, Isis, into Babylon. That's how they refer to her. So the ISS really is a temple to Isis. That's one thing. For another thing, you could call it Babylon. And part of what we're seeing, if you look at, this is just my prediction of what's going to happen. I think they're going to bring it down because the space station represents the Tower of Babylon. It's international. So it's all the nations of the world united, speaking one language, being the internet. And of course, it's going from Earth to the heavens. So it's just like the Tower of Babylon. And I think the Space Wars narrative ties into this. But really, the fact that they're phasing out green screen means they can't really use it much longer anyway. It's holding everything back. It's a jalopy. So I'm just waiting, and I'm expecting it to go down here. Just letting you know. They seem to have a match. My sights are on November the 30th. Echo Charlie says the Dragon capsule was all roomy. Okay, here's what struck me about that. I was watching the Dragon capsule approaching the ISS, and it was perfectly still, but the little Yoda thing was bouncing around. And I'm like, wow, how come the Yoda's bouncing around, but everything else is so perfectly still? Now, there's a couple of things I can add on to this Tower of Babylon thing, if you want to look at the architecture of the ISS. And it has to do with if you haven't seen it, there's a cathedral in New York called Cathedral of St. John the Divine. And on its various posts, it has these carvings of Revelations. But it's a modern take on Revelations, where New York City is Babylon. And you actually have a carving that shows the Twin Towers falling. And this is like 4 years before they actually fell. So here we are looking at a representation of Babylon falling, and New York's included. But I think that the World Trade Towers falling only partly connect to the Tower of Babylon. That's just the ground. I don't think it's the entire thing, and I think the process of Babylon falling isn't something that happens overnight. So I think 9/11 was when it starts, and I think that the process will be completed as the ISS goes down. Now, a couple of things that make me draw this conclusion, I'm talking about the architecture, is if you look at the space station itself, the solar array, when you look down the solar array, the solar panels at the Earth, it looks very similar to the Twin Towers. It's the strangest thing. And I think that these are symbols. All these things are put there to communicate on a level that you may not even register consciously that you're getting the message. And a couple of other things. So I mentioned how Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard and the founders of NASA, for the most part, I mean, it still is the same thelemic cult. It really is. And SpaceX is no different. Behind the scenes, you're looking at a fertility cult, like it or not. So Babylon and the way they drew their symbols for her always has this 77 on it, which I find very interesting here, considering the Mir station was 77 tons, and it fell on a 7/11, July 11th. So a lot of this numerology. So here's what I'm pointing at here, the final piece of this. Tom Cruise has completed 42 movies in his career. You can look that up. As of right now, he's completed 42 movies, and he's about to go to the space station. The space station is fake, as we know, but if someone like Tom Cruise goes up there and films a movie, it's going to cement the existence of outer space for the next 50 years, just like the moon landing did with Kubrick. So the interesting thing about Cruise is, one, he's a high-ranking Scientologist connected to L. Ron Hubbard, who was there at the very founding of NASA with JPL. I mean, think about it. L. Ron Hubbard was there at the founding of this whole thing. So that cult, you bring in Tom Cruise, who's part of the celebrity cult in the movie industry, which is all part of the PSYOP entertainment complex. He's always portraying a hero, very symbolic roles. I'd call your attention to Vanilla Sky. He plays a 33-year-old who dies, comes back after 3 days, and lives forever. Very Christy character, but in that movie, before he can reincarnate, he has to fall. Vanilla Sky is about falling from the vanilla sky. What's more, Like I said, 42 movies. He was in Top Gun. 33 years later, he announces Maverick, the sequel. In the sequel to Top Gun, he has a trailer. He announces this thing, and they show him wearing this Marine helmet. I think it's HGU 33. And he's like, I'm going to the space station. So 33 years after Top Gun, he puts out a trailer for Maverick and announces that he's going to the space station. Now, given that he was in Eyes Wide Shut, it's worth looking at his relationship to Stanley Kubrick. Because Stanley Kubrick, as you all know, faked the moon landing. He helped them, technical advisor, aesthetics. He probably created the whole thing, the whole stage. So Stanley Kubrick, I don't think you can doubt it. I mean, he let us know. He let us know in The Shining. If you don't want to recognize it, fine. He let us know in Eyes Wide Shut. If you don't want to recognize it, fine. But Stanley Kubrick was evidently proud of it. That's his legacy. He fooled the world, greatest piece of cinema ever, from his point of view, probably. So on the 30th anniversary of the Apollo 11 hoax, he releases Eyes Wide Shut, a movie starring Tom Cruise. Now, Eyes Wide Shut has this behind the scenes, what the elite are like, the secret societies, the masks, how they're all anonymous to one another. So it's giving you some behind the scenes. The movie also has some disturbing kind of insinuations of child sex trafficking, that kind of stuff. A whole lot of strange Wizard of Oz stuff worth looking at if you go into the symbolism of Eyes Wide Shut. But my point is, it was released on that anniversary for a reason. And then finally, the last thing is, for the last few years, a number of people who have been looking at the space station very critically have noted that whenever you see reflective surfaces, as in black mirrors that they're wearing, these tablets, more often than not, for some weird reason, they're never on. And what's even stranger is when you zoom in on these black surfaces, you often see masked individuals. People refer to them as demons on the ISS, but you got to think about it. Behind the fourth wall, whoever's holding the camera, we don't know who's there. It's a stage. So what we're seeing in these reflections would therefore be whoever we are not allowed to see, whoever's there behind the camera. And so it is curious to me that the types of faces that you see, the types of masks that you see reflected in those black mirrors do have a striking resemblance to the exact types of masks that we saw with Eyes Wide Shut, as though Stanley Kubrick was trying to tell us something about those behind the fourth wall faking space. That's sort of what I took out of that piece. So now, to find that Tom Cruise, of all people, is going to the space station, puts this together, and I'm like, okay, makes perfect sense now. And whatever happens, maybe Tom Cruise will go up there, hopefully, and it'll go down, and that might be the case. I have a feeling that he's going to go up there and plug the leak, so the Seven can escape, and he'll hold down the fort, and he'll go down with the ship or something. Maybe he'll survive. Eric of Bear says, I was just watching an HBO show called Moonbase 8, making a joke of NASA. Well, they generally make jokes of the people that make jokes about NASA. NASA is always, it seems to be above real criticism. And they say the most ridiculous things. Like right now, one of their main concerns, like the greatest threat to your survival, turns out it's not COVID. The greatest threat to your survival is not even climate change. It turns out to be asteroids, like rocks from the sky falling down. That's the main thing to be worried about. So I'm thinking, wait, so these are the same panel of experts, the same scientists who tell us to wear a mask and to maintain 6 feet of social distancing. So now they're telling us that a greater threat is from space rocks. So how long until they tell us to wear helmets? And they say, well, no, it's mandatory. If you're going to leave your house, you're going to wear a helmet. Now, masks, you can take those off if you're eating or exercising, but the helmet's mandatory whenever you leave your house. Who's going to be able to say no? You acquiesce to so much anyway. So, okay, fine, we'll go with the mask. We'll go with the mandatory holy water, hand sanitizer. Even if they tell people to make a cross with it, they will. Kneel outside of your front door. Now, the mask thing, too. Someone here says too expensive. I thought about that. But think about the masks, the masks. They're like, oh, no, don't buy those. Save them for the nurses. They're going to need them. Save them for the medical professionals. Just make your own. So people started making their own. Alyssa Milano crocheted hers. And I bet she regrets it because now she caught COVID and she can't taste anything and she's lost all her hair. But you'll see people strapping toasters to their heads. They'll be literally putting like anything, like lids of trash cans. But they will do it. So mandatory helmets. You'll have helmet shamers. Then you'll have the virtue signalers, who buy the expensive ones, who'll tell, I'm wearing this to protect you. Okay, let me see. Phones are open, 833-311-1984. I have a few other things I had to go through. I was just talking about the space station. For some reason, oh yes, the demographic match just kind of stood out to me, and I'm thinking, it looks like it's perfectly designed right now to have maximum impact. And that's what these things are. If you ever go back and watch the Giver discussing the Challenger explosion, he blames you. It's your fault. He's like, well, perhaps you just forgot that they were making big sacrifices for all mankind by going to space, and you stopped paying attention. Well, now you'll pay attention. Like, he basically guilt-tripped everybody for their deaths. Okay, there's a new movie coming out called Songbird. I was talking about this the other day. It's by the same producer of The Purge. And I wanted to point out that the Songbird is another version of the Phoenix. So you've seen it as the Crow. The Batman movie uses the symbol of the Phoenix. Songbird's a new one. And the Phoenix just basically means burn it down and build on what's on top. And it's sort of a clue as to who's behind this. The management of humankind through cyclic acts of destruction, reordering of society. I mean, that's what it looks like to me. But listen to this. The soon-to-be-released film Songbird is the first major project out of Hollywood since the lockdowns began. Smacks of predictive programming, trauma-based mind control, and a disturbing blurring of the lines between fact and fiction. This is not a new thing. The public doesn't know the difference between fact and fiction. It's pretty sad, actually. I mean, they're always chastising conspiracy theorists. Well, look, conspiracy theorists don't really exist. They've been vindicated. Conspiracy theorists, their very existence itself is a conspiracy theory. It is a conspiracy theory that there are people out there who are just organized on the principle that they like being wrong. Just a bunch of contrarians who never get tired of conjecture. It's like, no, that's not actually what it is. It's the critical thinkers. They have singled out critical thinkers and they've called them conspiracy theorists spreading dangerous misinformation. I mean, you have some hysterics who say that my channel's killing people. My opinions are killing people. I've killed more people than COVID-19. Linda Curtis says, build back better, Phoenix. Yeah, exactly. That's the whole program. And it's pretty evident here. I mean, we're looking at a massive transfer of wealth, massive power grabs, and the public thinks it's actually about a little cootie. Well, they thought so for a while. Now it's just a power grab. And I think even the people who believe in using this type of lockdown, I think they know it's just a tool and they don't care. Like, I'll put on my mask so I can bring about climate change regulations to save the planet. You know, Greta's super happy about COVID. Vaughn says, in that movie Songbird, in the trailer, they used the Bob Marley song, Everything's Gonna Be Alright. It was also used in I Am Legend and The Stand. Okay, a couple of things there. I Am Legend is based on that book about the last man on Earth. I think I Am Legend is actually Richard Matheson's book. And it's about a plague takes over the entire world. But yeah, you have the 2007 with Will Smith. Okay, yep, he's a U.S. Army virologist, Robert Neville. 2007 post-apocalyptic action thriller based on the 1954 novel by Matheson. So Richard Matheson's novel is the basis for Night of the Living Dead, I Am Legend. I mean, this genre I mean, we've had decades of programming. This is just an example. Generations of programming getting us ready for this type of COVID-19 lockdown situation. And science fiction isn't just wargaming out real possibilities. No, it's preparing people for fake news. So that's kind of interesting. Of course, the movie The Stand, just had its 42nd anniversary. You know, I just blocked Stephen King on Twitter. I can't stand him. Highly toxic. Okay, The Stand, 1978. It had its 42nd anniversary this year, and they're remaking it. Again, 42 years ago today, October the 3rd, Stephen King gave us The Stand. On December 17th, it comes to life. Not a coincidence. You know, Space Invaders, 42nd anniversary. Turner Diaries, 42nd anniversary. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, 42nd anniversary. There are so many. The list goes on. But this is very significant because it's another movie about the world dying, lockdowns, etc. And it's not surprising that it would be a Stephen King. All of his books are part of this thing. All of his books are there to foment communist revolution. Look at The People Under the Stairs. I mean, these are really thinly disguised allegories. Maximum Overdrive, all these movies. People Under the Stairs, you have the lower class being oppressed by the white people in the mansion. When you have the Robin Hood type characters, LL Cool J and his sidekick, they go in, they blow the place up, and money shoots out the chimney, and the people get liberated from the basement. And then while they're running outside, the money is just falling from the skies. And, you know, communism, to each according to his need, from each according to his ability. Well, the homeless people at the shopping carts got the most reparations. Maximum Overdrive, green cloud comes from space, kind of like the C-19 comet that preceded COVID-19, like space AIDS. But in Maximum Overdrive, the green cloud causes all the appliances to come to life and attack us. So it's just another way of saying capitalism, consumerism, your elevated standard of living will destroy us all. Your toaster is literally killing you. It's all communist. Echo Charlie says, science fiction is just fiction too. Writers got it right. I would say no. I would say that the worldview that they write from is inherently political. It's inherently biased. It's actually more than that. It'd be like Christian literature. You could say, well, it's just Christian fiction or Muslim fiction or fiction written from any perspective, atheistic. You have to consider the perspective of the writers. And the fact is, science fiction has a very specific role in the world state religion where they've told us that it's fiction and entertainment, when in reality, it's our mythology. It's a replacement for old mythologies. And, of course, it's a worldview based on false science. Commenter says, your toaster is literally Hitler. Yes, exactly. It is. You are. Your mouth? Your mouth is, I mean, your face is an obscenity. Bill Gates has said that the people who don't want to wear masks are like nudists. He doesn't understand it. I have not seen Bill Gates put on a mask. Have you? Lloyd Miller says Dean Koontz promoted masked shooting-based mind control to push gun control. Exactly. If you look at a lot of these guys, Dean Koontz, for example, they're creating the characters that were made, that were introduced to on the world stage. They help promulgate certain stereotypes so that when they give you fake news, it fits. This is an old thing. They've always been doing this. And one thing about these novels, like right now, for example, we are living in a Tom Clancy novel. 9/11 was a Tom Clancy called Sum of All Fears. And just so you know, because Sum of All Fears came out in 1991. And it was, not only was it predictive of 9/11, I mean, if you look here, Tom Clancy, the writer who predicted 9/11. Sum of All Fears tests our post 9/11 threshold for plots. So this is brought up, but the thing is, when 9/11 actually happened, which was 10 years after the book came out, there was an astronaut on the ISS who was watching 9/11 from above. And he said that while he was watching the towers burn, he happened to be reading a copy of the Sum of All Fears. Like, what are the odds that you're in the space station looking down at New York as it undergoes a terror attack, just like the one you're reading about in this mass paperback? And then what's more, right now we're living in dark winter, or we're about to. So just a heads up, another Tom Clancy novel headed our way. Linda Curtis says, picture this, Bill Gates naked. Well, I want to see him with a mask first. And someone needs to explain the curious resemblance of Melinda to both Robin Williams and Kevin Kline, two individuals who do not look alike. It's the strangest thing, right? If A equals B and A equals C, well then B should equal C. But in this case, it doesn't. It's a true paradox. Lloyd says the establishment media keeps saying that Trump's charges of election fraud are baseless, even though the evidence and circumstances have been presented. Yeah, it's wonderful. You see, it's like pulling back a slingshot or something. I mean, what they're doing right now is so terrible and so cynical. And I think we all know how it ends. But look, give it a couple more weeks. Raise expectations higher and higher. Maximum cognitive dissonance. And then when they make the announcement, it's going to be that's the Kraken, if you ask me. And I'm looking at it, it's like, wow, they really do believe that the media tells us what's real and what's not. Like the media determines reality. That's how scientists are seen as well today. Scientists are believed to just say, well, 97% of us declare this, therefore it's true. Let me just play this just for a bit of perspective here. So when the media declared Biden the winner, someone who has lived through a few elections and knows how the process works, responded to it, and that would be Kenneth Copeland. Just take a listen.
The media, what? The media said Joe Biden's president.
Now, that goes on for a good minute and a half, but you get the idea. I mean, it is kind of laughable that the media act like they say something's true when it's true. Jordan says, as foreshadowing by CNN, Zachariah. Yeah, I'd like to see that. There's a lot of foreshadowing, and I think The Division says it all. I mentioned the Tom Clancy. It's actually The Division. And there's a game called Dark Winter based on it. And there's a simulation war game called Dark Winter, just like the one we had, the Event 201 that preceded the COVID-19 war game that we just lived through 19 years ago, right before 9/11. We had Dark Winter, a simulated bio attack / civil war / the money's got AIDS, got to burn it all. Everything we're going through right now has already been war gamed 19 years ago. 5 Minutes of Fame says the Great Reset is a countermeasure of USA going bankrupt. They want to claim all our property. If the U.S. goes bankrupt independently, we keep our stuff, property rights, and banks take a loss. Sounds legit. And the idea of private property is under attack. Oh, it's just private property. The rioters and looters were showing this. They were trying to make a moral case that property is just property. You can destroy it. People over profits. It's another thing they always chant. Remember that? People over profits. Well, it's not that simple. And not only is it not that simple, but when they attack property rights, they're actually attacking you because your thoughts are your property, your mind's your property. Your privacy is under attack. All right, let us go ahead and move on. We were looking at, here we go. This is from the Book of Five Rings. Truth is not what you want it to be. It is what it is. And you must bend to its power or live a lie. And that's pretty much what we're seeing right now. A lot of people are living a lie right now. The world stage is based on lies. I would say that this live stream, this channel, might actually be the only channel out there not based on the assumption that all of these major worldview shaping lies are real, are true. Now, as far as this reset concept, if you haven't seen it, Time magazine, and they're always super prophetic, all these magazine covers, but they did one recently worth looking at. It says The Great Reset. And then it says time, which of course time and reset together. And this is right after we had our daylight savings. So this comes out and you have a globe that just needs one more piece put into place. And I liken this to the capstone on the top of the pyramid. But the Great Reset, the idea that there's something being completed. And I've had this notion since really coronavirus that what we're looking at is something that was probably planned 100 years ago. Like for sure, 9/11 wasn't something that Dick Cheney and George Bush thought about a couple years before it happened. Those towers were built to be destroyed. I mean, these things go very far back. And this is all very much revealed by the predictive programming and scripting, insider knowledge, forecasting. This is what I find so fascinating about Donald Trump, is that he was inserted into the world stage in fiction in several ways, just like so that almost as though he's an entirely fabricated character living a role. It's the strangest thing. And you've got to look at this Baron Trump's time travel adventures. Now, this is an interesting one. So if you look at Baron Trump's time travel adventures, these Baron Trump novels, it's a 19th century book featuring a baron, a dawn, a trip to Russia, time travel, 1893's Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey, and 1896's The Last President. Well, the one called The Last President is the one that I find more interesting because the opening scene, and again, this came out in 1896, the opening scene to The Last President is a Tuesday, November the 3rd. And it's in the wake of a contested election and everything falling apart. So very, very predictive. And how would you predict that many years in advance? And this is only just a small example of how Trump's persona, his character, has been written into the narrative. And I think he's specifically written in such a way to be hated and loved by the different halves. Like, he's not meant to be a uniter. I think he's a made-to-order divider, which is not a bad thing. He flaunts all the values that the political left hates. It doesn't mean he's a bad person. Like, am I a bad person because I choose not to recycle? That I deliberately put glass in the plastics thing and the recyclables and the non-recyclables? That I purposefully flaunt the system? No, I'm not a bad person. All right, let's see what else we have here. We've got, I'm going through my tweets, just showing you, Release the Kraken, at least 4 months ago, was being force memed into the mass consciousness. And I did find a peculiar resemblance here to the word Karen. I say before, I'm not really big on numerology or numbers and stuff, but I do look at patterns and memes, and I just do find it kind of curious here. Kraken and Karen do have a very close, in terms of how they're spelled, they're kind of anagrammatically related. Might be something to it. Okay, the new film Songbird. I'm not going to play the clip, but I wanted to talk about this for a minute because this is the thing about it. I don't have high expectations for Big Brother. I don't believe there's going to be a third wave. There are people who are like, there's going to be a third wave and it's going to be worse. It's like, what do you mean? We haven't had a first wave. I'm still waiting for that. I haven't had any evidence of that. And I'm being told that we're living through a second. I'm still looking for the first. And now we're told to worry about a third. So it's way worse on TV than it is in real life. You don't know anybody in real life who died from the Kung flu. Getting kicked, it's like as though they were kicked in the head and they just fall on the ground. You don't, I don't, unless you count Tom Hanks, which I don't. That wasn't the Kung flu. With Tom Hanks, that was the sniffles. The soon-to-be-released film, Songbird, is the first major project out of Hollywood since the lockdowns began, and it smacks of predictive programming, trauma-based mind control, and a disturbing blurring of the lines between fact and fiction. Now here's a quote here from Alan Watts. Predictive programming is a subtle form of psychological conditioning provided by the media to acquaint the public with planned societal changes to be implemented by our leaders. If and when these changes are finally put through, the public will be familiar with them and will accept them as natural. This will lessen the public's resistance and commotion. And he's right. Just before, if you remember, leading up to this COVID-19 lockdown, like I think it was like in the weeks leading up to it, we had a series of documentaries that came out on Netflix called Pandemic. It was like a 5-part series. And this blending of fiction and fact, many examples of this. A good one on Netflix, again, is the one about going to Mars, where it goes from CGI and fiction and movie sets where they're on Mars, and then it throws in real scenes from NASA, quote, real launches, and then it goes into cameos with people like Elon Musk, and then real documentary footage mixed in with the drama. And it's so well done that if you didn't know any better, if you were in a coma for the last 10 years, and you were to watch it, you might walk away from it thinking you just saw a lot of people living out their lives on Mars. Okay, this is from greenmed.info. A songbird is not only deeply disturbing because it stretches the imagination into unthinkable territory, but it sends chills because it speaks to what many are already horrified to have seen and they believe they'll continue to see. All in the name of protecting us against the deadly virus. So this movie is about mandatory lockdowns, about people being forcibly removed from their homes by medicalized, military police, or military police in PPE. So if you look on the screen here, I have an image from Wuhan, and this is what I would call the Kung Flu. So you see here, we're supposed to believe, just looking at this picture, and this is how absurd this stuff was, but people bought it at the time because they were emotional and scared. We're supposed to believe here that this individual was just walking along, being a good citizen with his mask, and then COVID caught him, and he fell on the ground. Is that how the flu gets you? Is that how COVID gets you? Do you know anybody who was just living their life like normal, and they walked down a sidewalk where somebody had sneezed an hour ago, and they caught a COVID, and it just knocked them down, out of breath? No way. And we saw dozens of these. In fact, it was a lot of fun just kind of laughing at the crisis actors in China before they locked us down. We were making fun of it. We're like, look, they must have hired Gene Rosen from the Gene Rosen School of Crisis Acting. Some of the worst crisis actors I've ever seen have come out of Wuhan. It was a joke. There were some scenes where they were running bodies through hospitals, like really fast, and you hear the director say, cut in Chinese. Then they would stop running. So, again, this whole thing is staged. There's no such thing. So I'm waiting for the third wave, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Going through comments here. Echo Charlie says, Hanks got a close-up during Ricky Gervais's Epstein Hollywood ties rant. Okay, when Tom Hanks caught it, remember this. Tom Hanks catches COVID. Then he goes to Australia to be a volunteer fireman or something. I mean, I don't know what the story is. So Tom Hanks is like, climate change is happening, so I'm going to Australia to fight it, whatever that means. Because Australia was on fire. So the place is an inferno. Hanks, the first COVID patient in America, goes to Australia. While he's there, he gets quarantined. He's quarantined because he found out that he's got the COVID. Someone pointed out to me that there's a Dan Brown novel called Inferno. And the Dan Brown novel, Inferno, has a movie starring Tom Hanks. Inferno is about a pandemic. It's called Inferno. It's a super virus. And the protagonist, played by Tom Hanks, wakes up in a hospital in Italy in the book Inferno. So here, again, at the time that Tom Hanks is in Australia under quarantine, Italy goes into lockdown. That's where his character was, in the hospital, when the Inferno breaks out. And here he is in burning Australia. I mean, none of these are coincidences. They have these characters who play on the movies that gain your trust. Everybody loves Forrest Gump. Everybody loves Tom Hanks for some reason. So then he's able to convey, hey, look, he's able to convey convincingly that he's going through this stuff with everybody else. And I noticed a lot of the lefties did this. They would, like if you look at The Daily Show, they're not getting haircuts. They're acting as though they don't have decent clothes anymore. and they're purposely looking disheveled. And it's in a very calculated way. So we think that, oh, look, they're actually sacrificing their hairdressers, and no, they're not. It's all just an act. Echo Charlie says, when the mask attacks started against naked-faced people like zombies, I knew that would be the zombie predictions coming true. Oh, wait until the cannibalism. No, I'm just kidding. But that is probably more symbolic than anything, I hope. Lane Dion says, life is like a box of COVIDs. Brendan M. says, the Wuhan scenes were pulled from the Korean film The Flu. It looked like it, didn't it? And we're supposed to believe that they're welding people's doors shut. Like, I just don't buy any of that. Like, they would do that here. Like, oh my God, they're gonna weld our doors shut. Like, most people here would be happy. It's like, oh, Jeff Bezos will supply all my needs. I just got to sit at home and watch Netflix. Okay, so again, this was the story, though. It says, people were being removed from their homes. They were soldering doors shut. So fake. Now it says here, and this is from Green Med Info, it is conspicuous that Songbird received approval to be the first film to be made during the COVID-19 in Los Angeles when all the other major products were forbidden. I said this too. I said, if you're a writer and you want to produce films, if you want to get contracts, you want to get gigs, get into cli-fi or basically a pandemic fiction, climate fiction, tsunamis caused by anthropogenic global warming. I could do a movie where global warming caused the migration of bats who brought their coronavirus to Wuhan. I mean, you could make these plot lines and you could probably get through all the regulations, cut all the red tape, and they'll throw money at you to make it. So it says the movie has top investors including Chinese company Tencent and many others. Oh, look. Now that's interesting. So it also has connections to a multinational technology conglomerate holdings company that has medical and artificial intelligence divisions with investment ties to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It says, in the terrifying thriller, the COVID-23 has mutated and the world is in its fourth year of lockdown. Infected Americans are ripped from their homes and forced into quarantine camps known as Q zones, from which there is no escape. A few fight back, it's dystopian. Okay. Now, this is again playing upon a big fear that I don't believe in. I don't believe that there's any Q zones. Your Q zone is your living room. That's where your Q zone is, where you self-monitor, you charge your own self-monitoring devices, and you maintain your own quarters. You don't fight or organize with other inmates. So no, your home is your Q zone. Nobody's going to take you. And that's why I think movies like this will easily fail. At least for me, fail to have any real impact or attraction because it just doesn't reflect real life. Now, if this really was like the Wuhan flu and there were bodies on the streets and the homeless were dying and the cats were dying and birds are falling out of the sky, yeah, this would be a good movie to watch with your family and just think about the threats that we have around us. But I'm going to go ahead and go through the rest of this article to see if there's anything else in here. So he's talking about CDC guidelines. Listen to this. Guidance for the prevention of COVID-19 infections among high-risk individuals in camps and camp-like settings. That's why I don't think camps make sense. If you put people in camps, don't you just... Like, I was thinking, what happens to Flat Earth F-word? They throw him in jail because he's contravening the quarantine mandates. He goes in jail and he catches COVID. So what? And they're going to let him go because there's too much COVID? So I think it makes the most sense to just leave everybody at home. And I really think that people who believe in this, like if you wholeheartedly believe in the virus, I think you should stay home all the time. Like, why should you ever leave your house? Do you realize how brave you are? Like, pat yourself on the back if you believe in the virus and you walk around with a mask on, because you're staring down certain death and you know it. The rest of us aren't. We know it's bullshit. Okay, let's see here. Commenter says Jim Carrey starred in a movie called Number 23, and there's something significant about that number, hence COVID 23. Right. Well, the number 23 is based on the Cosmic Trigger by Robert Anton Wilson, and it all references the dog star, Sirius, which is interesting considering Jim Carrey's in The Truman Show, and he wakes up to the fact that his whole world is a show when the dog star, satellite, falls from the sky. The number 23, according to the author Robert Anton Wilson, is synonymous with the goddess of chaos. It has to do with, I believe it's the number of chaos. I think he said the dog star references the dog as a guard dog that warns against the floods. So, in other words, 23 could equate to chaos and order, which follows. It's just an Illuminati code word or something. But in the movie, he loses his mind over trying to figure out what it means. And part of the book, though, gets into that star in particular and its significance to various individuals. I mean, every Masonic temple has a star on the wall that is a reference to this particular one. And I was talking to someone very well researched in astrotheology, and he was describing a number of things about that star. Specifically where it is on midnight on New Year's. So this is an interesting one. So directly over your head, this is the alignment. So the connection between the star Sirius and New Year's Eve on Earth. So at midnight on New Year's Eve, we are directly downstream from the brightest star, which is Sirius. It says deeply embedded into our cultural celebrations of New Year's Eve is a celestial synchronicity. Now, this site calls it a synchronicity. I think it's much more than that. Like it's intentionally planned. The ball dropping in Times Square. It has to do with this. So, here is the synchronicity. And it has to do with where it is directly over our head. And it says, when at midnight on New Year's Eve, a Sirius is directly over us. So I'm going to get past the new agey stuff and just find out exactly why they would start the year. Here we go. So as the ball drops over Times Square on December 31st, so does a blast of energy from Sirius, the Shining One. This year at midnight, December 31st. Anyway, this is a kind of one of these woo sites, new agey stuff. I don't know, but its position on New Year's and then its trajectory thereafter for the rest of the year is highly significant. But yeah, for some reason, all the cults are based around that particular star. Jedi Master says Karen should be named Times Person of the Year. Yeah, I was thinking COVID-19 or Rona Real maybe. Have you seen Rona Real? Jedi Master says, I wonder if they've ever measured this energy. It's a good question. Is there any objective measure for it? How would you know? I've wondered the same thing. Everything within the whole New Age concept and belief in magic, all of it presupposes some sort of energetic exchange between the lights above and the perceivers below. That these aren't dead stars or distant light sources. Now, Rona Real, let me bring this up really quick here. It's the dumbest thing. You know how propaganda is. They have to reach everybody. And how do you make Rona or coronavirus cool? Like, how do you make the coronavirus appealing to the youth so you can properly scare them? And so what they've done is, and this is out of Michigan, this is a trademarked character. They actually have a character named Rona who, he looks kind of like a knockoff of the Kool-Aid Man. I hope they don't get sued. Michigan's infectious little mingler. Always down to turn up. So you're only allowed to have 2 in the car. If you have 3, Rona can show up. That's kind of how they're showing children how to be wary. So, for example, you wanted a new boo to meet your parents. Don't bring Rona home too. So you're going to bring your girlfriend home to your parents? Well, make sure she doesn't have the Rona. But this is out of Michigan. And I was thinking Rona Real would make a great person of the year. It's either going to be Dr. Fauci or maybe even Colin Kaepernick. Although Governor Cuomo got an Emmy Award for his performance. Oh, here's a good one. Rona loves a sick party. 6 feet and covering up helps keep Rona away all party long. They need to do duck and cover for Rona. Duck and cover drills. Because anytime you go to a restaurant, they say, well, you can walk around with your mask on. But if you're going to eat and take your mask off, you have to sit. So I guess the idea here is that if you're below 5 feet, like you're sitting down at a table, the Rona will just go over your head when your mask is off, which means that it's probably safe then to say that duck and cover would protect you from a sneeze, for example. You're in a crowded restaurant, somebody sneezes, maybe without a mask on, just go under the cover of the table for a few minutes until the Rona has flown out the window. 5 Minutes of Fame says a Chinese lander has entered the moon orbit. You know what NASA and JAXA and ESA and the rest don't do is they don't share their CGI tech. China's moon landings always look so fake. You got to, I mean, they're not on the same sheet whatsoever, or they have lower standards, or they just don't have the same level of criticism that the American media gets. But for all the crap we give NASA, they're a lot better than what China gives us. Cheap Chinese space program, cheap Chinese space junk. Look at that. Looks like aluminum foil. Shower curtains. I could have made that out of products from Home Depot. $50. So what you're looking at here is not the moon. And this is always the case. Whenever you look at lunar photography, ask yourself, where's the moonscape? Like, go outside and look. Do you see past your neighbor's house and the world just ends? No, it actually goes on as far as your eyes can see. And if you notice, a couple of things. Here's the lunar rover thing, and I'm like, clearly it's CGI, but as low as it is to the ground, and you can look at the shadows here, you can kind of ascertain for yourself. We should be seeing several miles of moonscapes, and we don't. So that's just something to watch out for. China sent a rocket to Mars. It's called the Long March 11. A lot of interesting things about this one. The Long March 11 is kind of a code, if you ask me. The communists have used the phrase, the long march through the institutions, which is to subvert the minds of the property owners so they're willing to become good commies and go live in a space gulag. So I find it interesting that they call it the Long March. And what's more, it's the Long March 11, as in 3/11. COVID-19 cover for this communist revolution. They're even saying your money carries COVID. Like, this is literally about destroying everything, about owning everything. If you've paid attention to the Great Reset, they say you won't own anything. Well, COVID-19 is an attack on your property, specifically you, but it's an attack on pretty much everything. But that is a big part of it. So the Long March 11 happening to be the name of the rocket that China is sending to Mars. And to me, sending Americans to Mars, sending anybody to Mars, represents the total success of this multi-generational mind control operation, where people are so entranced that they are going to believe that, yes, people are going to Mars. And I might just go too, and I'll leave behind my car, leave behind my smartphone, my individuality, and I'll go up there and join this collective. I mean, it's really that. It's gulag life. Property owners into happy slaves. Riley still says, Tim, did you ever see how they make aluminum foil? They take a giant piece of aluminum and run it through rollers like pasta. I have a link here. Someone had left a message about the Executive Order 1776. Let's see what we have here. By the authority, and this is from November the 2nd. Executive Order, by the authority invested in me as President by the Constitution, I hereby Let's go see what this is about. Section 1, Purpose. The American founding envisioned a political order in harmony with the design of the laws of nature and nature's God. Now, what am I looking for exactly? I'm not going to go through all of it, but what does this executive order, is it 1368? What does this executive order actually do? What does it have to do with 1776? It just sounds like more hopium. And so many people are addicted to this stuff, hopium. Like maybe tomorrow they're going to finally lock up Hillary Clinton. They're finally going to get some truth out of Ghislaine Maxwell. MoodTube says, rare Christmas star, event happening on 12/21. I've heard a lot about this. People keep saying when Jupiter and Saturn go into conjunction, Jupiter is going to lay down the hurt on planet Earth, dropping lightning bolts, plasma apocalypse, melting everything on the surface, frying all the electronics, short-circuiting human consciousness itself. So we've got about 4 weeks left. No, I'm sorry, 3 weeks and 3 days. And then what? Everything gets, I mean, are we going to be amnesiacs afterwards? Are we going to remember any of this stuff? Is it that kind of a reset? Executive Order 1368. Presidential Executive Order on restoring state, tribal, and... Yeah, please let me know, because I'm kind of missing out on what exactly the significance of that is. 5 Minutes of Fame says, don't use foil, you get dementia from aluminum. They're supposed to be tin foil caps anyway. Tin foil. And for the 5G phobics, it's tin foil underwear and tin foil caps because they believe that it can sterilize you. Don't eat the aluminum. All right. I want to go through the headlines of the week. Phones are open, 833-311-1984. You get to vaccinate your mind against non-mainstream views. Big UN agenda, big push by the UN to get us to stop thinking aloud. So it's not enough that you put a mask on to block the words. You put a mask on to stop the spread of droplets. No, now you actually need to put a mask over your mind, over the words that you spread. So you have the UN saying, join me in taking a pledge to pause before sharing and spreading misinformation online. So let's go ahead and see what he has to say.
The COVID-19 pandemic, the wrong information can be deadly. Take the pledge to pause and help stop the spread of misinformation.
Help stop the spread of misinformation, because misinformation matters so much. You know, they have 110,000 volunteers called information volunteers, IVs. These IVs will be going into spaces on the internet, which they define as, well, places where people talk or chat. So right here, we're having a gathering. I mean, wait until they start limiting the number of people in chat rooms. That you have to have 6 blank spaces between every chat. Oh, you can't comment until the moderator puts 5 blank spaces. You got to space your chats apart. Like, they're trying to treat the internet like it's having its own pandemic. And they're using the pandemic model to advance the cause of censorship. They've been doing this from the beginning. When I first saw the mask, I knew it. I said, that mask is going to be an emblem of, don't spread it. It basically means I trust the scientists. I won't speak out against them. And they've been saying that English spreads COVID more than any other language. Have you heard that? So what are we supposed to speak? Mandarin? I mean, do I have to learn how to speak Chinese or something? Because apparently the words that I'm using, and I bet the word hoax, I bet the word flat spreads it more than anything else. I bet fake does. Here's from Forbes, speaking English. New research suggests English speakers put more droplets into the air when they talk. That makes them more likely to spread the devil virus. Research shows that speaking English can spread COVID-19. Yeah, wash your hands if you sign language. Right, exactly. Upraised middle finger can spread COVID-19. I'm surprised they haven't said that it comes out of your eyes and goes into other people's eyes. But I have seen some articles or some signs, like there was some signage, some bar in the UK, some pub, and it's like, don't make eye contact with anybody not at your table. Like, what? Because eye contact can lead to social distance violations, friendships. And having friends is akin to having a terrorist cell if you're in a pandemic, where a few of you gathered can actually represent an existential threat to the human race. So I'm waiting for them to mandate. So right now they have the masks. They'll probably add the helmets for space junk once the scientists say so. And then they're going to say, oh, we got to put black goggles on, opaque, to stop the droplets, and opaque to stop you from seeing other people's eyes and leading to communication. They should just go ahead and bring out goose stepping. Yeah, goose step, dunce cap, diapers. Just see how far they can get it to go. I mean, really. Aku says, they said it enters your eyes, hence the visors. Right. Jordan says, maybe only short-fingered sign languagers, less flinging. Right. No flinging gestures. Like the upraised middle finger is a very flingy gesture. You can't do that anymore. Yeah, just put us in white robes and hoods. Put us in Tyvek burqas. I said this back in March. Like, yeah, you're going to see all those on the right, the extreme xenophobic right, who are worried about a stealth jihad taking down America. The ones who thought that Obama was like the Antichrist and all this. Like, oh, there's going to be a stealth jihad and they're going to have us all in burqas and washing our hands 10 times a day and praying to Mecca. Well, here we are, Tyvek burqas, washing our hands 10 times a day and banging pots and pans towards the NHS, which is the Mecca of this thing. I'm like, yeah, I would say they did it. Stealth jihad accomplished. Only it's a combination of Islam, Christianity, and scientism. That's really what comprises this new world order religion, with a refashioned version of eschatology, global warming, sin, virus, evil, systemic oppression. I mean, they figured this out. It's all based on a template. We're in a world-spanning doomsday cult, and we're in the minority. We're apostates. We're not exiles, which is worse. Because, I mean, it really is. We voluntarily left, and we know better. See, if you're ignorant about it, they can save you. But if you know what it's about and then you leave, well, then they have to destroy you. Lloyd Miller says, English spreads COVID because English is the international language, the language of propaganda. Right, by that rationale, COVID's actually spread by the television. Like, if nobody watched TV on September the 11th, 2001, I don't think it would have had the impact. You know, time blunts the impact. Information blunts the impact. It's the uncertainty that they need. And that's why I don't think that the second wave or third wave will work, because we haven't had a first wave. 5 minutes of fame is a great business concept. Uber Eats, Uber diaper collection. Oh, wait till you see Uber Vax or VaxDash. VaxDash, imagine, you're like, man, I'm not feeling too good. You have the sniffles. Same symptoms that Tom Hanks had, so you're worried. So you go to your phone, you hit VaxDash out, and Bill Gates shows up at your door with a COVID-23, COVID-24, COVID-25, whatever you want, whatever you need. All black market. None of it's FDA approved, but he'll take your money. He'll take your dirty COVID-laden money. No, English spreads more dangerous thought crimes, mind viruses, than any other language, I would say. Flat Earth, what an inconvenient meme for Big Brother. Auto hoax, fake. We do have an entire lexicon dedicated to calling bullshit on the MSM. We really do. Crisis actors. There are so many words that have been invented to describe the nature of the labyrinth that we find ourselves in that, yeah, of course they're going to want to ban it. Which is another reason why I think it's important to use our own words or appropriate words. Like, I recently appropriated conspiratainment and conspiratained for my purposes, because I feel like They want to demonize people who are entertained by critical thinking. Yeah, critical thinking is very entertaining. It's very entertaining to engage in a rational parsing of the facts, deconstructing mass media events, analyzing the various dominant world paradigm shaping news outlets. It's very entertaining. It's very entertaining when we find evidence of conspiracies or the appearance that they're trying to make us think that there's a conspiracy. Like whether or not you think that Tom Hanks eats babies, you cannot say that there hasn't been a concerted effort by Tom Hanks and everybody around him to make us think that he does. So my question is why? And I'm very entertained by it. But they don't want us to even discuss these things. You can't even spread it. And that's because if somebody sees it, the idea, they can repeat it. And ultimately, this is about thought control, reality curation. And we've gone over the rails. You have a number, like, look, why is it that, we'll take, for example, the Deftones guitarist Stephen Carpenter. Stephen Carpenter said that the earth is flat in an interview on a podcast, or he thinks it might be something else. He also doesn't believe in vaccines or COVID-19. So Deftones guitarist, he looks like a heavy metal performer would, outsider, nonconformist. Nothing about him says that he would be walking lockstep with all the conformists. Kind of like Dee Snider, we ain't going to take it. You have these rebels out there. But with Dee Snider, he was pretty mad when he saw mask refuseniks using his song as an anthem. He said, no, mask up, morons. Well, this guy from Deftones is suggesting that he doesn't believe in this stuff. Well, they don't give him the freedom to do so. So you can be in a rock band, you can sing about any topic, you can broach any subject, but if you go into this one, nope, they draw a line. They pulled him back from the edge. You could sing death metal, you can sing about every form of atrocity imaginable. Sing about sacrificing babies to Moloch. You could write a death metal band about the Hillary Clinton body count, and that will all go through. But no, you can't sing about this. And he didn't sing about it, he just mentioned it. Imagine if it was a song. Now, Green Day did a song called Flat Earth, but it was sort of a Bauhaus ripoff, highly unoriginal. The video was kind of good. Not as good as a Chief Crow video, but they did it as a joke, as a self-conscious parody. So they weren't saying the earth is flat. They're saying the earth isn't flat, and people who think so are obviously dumb. I mean, it was a mockery. All right, let's move on here. I'm going through these UN comments. COVID-19 is not just the century's largest public health emergency, it's a communication crisis. Yeah, communication is a crisis for them. They don't want communication. That's why they want to get rid of your mouth. Your mouth is now an obscenity. Like I said the other day, taking your mask off in public is just like walking around in the nude, according to these technocrats. Commenter says, crazy that you think hiring information volunteers to push whatever you tell them is going to go over well. Right. Information volunteers, we've dealt with these before. I think we used to call them here troll flakes. Basically, people who are just very offended. Like for a living, or just they love getting offended. They troll you over things, they flag your content, but they're also very fragile. Like Kim Kardashian doesn't want to live in a world where there's memes on the internet that are unflattering. So she's self-quarantining in Facebook. And you can't underestimate the importance of Kim Kardashian freezing her social media. Because what they're conveying here is that the internet itself needs to be subject to more regulation against ideas and memes that are deemed dangerous. Commenter says, David Prowse, the guy who played Darth Vader, died today at 85. Okay, I thought he already had. I remember watching a couple of pieces on him. Interesting character there. Darth Vader is a modern archetype, represents Saturn. Okay, David Prowse. Okay, yep, exactly. That's right. The voice was James Earl Jones, but this is the man behind the mask. All right. I was talking about this the other day because you can look at the star, the planet Saturn, and you look at the moon, And it looks exactly like the Death Star. Not a coincidence. Saturn's moon looks like the Death Star. Darth Vader just means, Dark Father, Vader's father. He's the father of the son, the Skywalker. Luke is light. Lloyd Miller says, maybe we should defame the Masonic elite as moron believers in astrology. Yeah, they certainly do. They certainly do believe in it. Everything is coordinated based on it, and we can prove it. Like, this is not a conspiracy theory. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. This is not even conspiracy conjecture. These are just the facts. I mean, you can have your own opinions, but you're not really entitled to your own facts. And it is a fact that Derek Chauvin did not kill George Floyd, and we can prove this. They probably lived together. Maybe they took up residence in that golden domed temple at Epstein Island, hanging out with RGB and Tupac. But whatever the case, no way it happened the way we were shown. In fact, there was one witness who contacted me through a YouTube comment, and I'm trying to track this person down. They claim they know someone who walked up to the scene and saw a training dummy, and they were told, oh, they're filming a video to raise awareness about police brutality. So I don't know if that's true or not, but again, there's too much about that particular event that we could deconstruct it. I mean, Derek Chauvin, 9/11 to America, kneeling for 8:46, a clear reference to 8:46 a.m. when the Twin Towers were under attack, starting at 8:46. The sun set at 8:46 in the Twin Cities on that day as they were entering Gemini, the twins, Twin Cities, Twin Towers, sun setting 8:46, suffocating the guy 8:46. The sunset represents the death of the sun in these various rituals, the death of the sun god. And the sun god Osiris was being played in this Freemasonic ritual by George Floyd, which is why they put him in a golden casket and had 4 funerals, one for each of the 4 directions. This is ancient ritual in plain sight, and it's clearly connected to astrology. Lloyd says, we're examining their religions in a spirit of awe. Is it a mistake? Are we allowing superstitious morons to rule us? No, I would say it's actually a science. I think there's a science to it, and maybe it has to do with nothing more than just keeping track of time. But there's something behind all of this stuff that we're not privy to. I mean, there's a reason that this stuff is veiled. You look at these secret societies, everything is allegory. Everything has meanings hidden behind meanings, and the inner elect are given the true meanings of these things, and I don't think we have the real information about any of this stuff. They must know what the stars really are. I would look at the character of John D. Edward Kelly, specifically, for some idea about what the elite think about the stars. There's something about John D. I found really interesting. So he's of course, he's the one who was the 007 spy for the Queen Elizabeth I, but he coined the term British Empire. So it's not a nobody. So John Dee coins the term British Empire. He was an advisor to the voyages of exploration, the English voyages, like Mercator. He knew Mercator. So you look at your globe, the Mercator projection with all of its flaws and distortions. Well, this was his advisor. But I found a couple of interesting things about John Dee's version of Christianity. And this is all kind of curious to me. Because you're familiar with the Trinity. But he didn't have a Trinity. He actually had a 4th person added, or 4th, whatever you would call it. And it seemed like this was kind of like what he and the inner elite were into. So it wasn't Christianity as we think. He did believe in that angels could be invoked, and he used black mirrors and telescopes to communicate with angels. And somewhere along the line, angel gets conflated with the stars, and it's all very much a religious concept of the world based on the idea that the stars are conscious beings and that you interact with them by bringing their light into your ritual chamber with a telescope. Of course, John D. Edward Kelly were often seen. You find images of these individuals in graveyards, raising the dead, talking to spirits. One other point about this character is that if you looked at Aleister Crowley or the modern occult movements, everything they do, Wiccans even, ritualistically, derives from this individual and the format that he brought forth. So whatever people think about this individual, he's really into this stuff, was really into this stuff, talking to angels or whatever. And supposedly he was told about the apocalypse, that he let these beings into the world. I mean, I don't know how much of this stuff is just fiction, delusion. I mean, who knows what else? But he was an astronomer, astrologer, occultist, and alchemist. And the fact that he was a political advisor for the founding of the English colonies, all of this is very, very interesting. He was also instrumental in the Gregorian calendar being implemented, something people resisting the calendar. Why would they resist that? Well, I think it's ultimately about time control. You talk about Orwell's statement. He talks about the use of the media to control the present, so you can write the past, rewrite the past, control it, and therefore control the future. And that's time control, if you ask me. Lloyd says, science does not support astrology. All references must be banned from the mass media. Real Red Dragon says, those are cosmic entities. I've had personal experiences. Well, I'd like to know your thoughts, because I've read a lot of their stuff. John D. Edward Kelly, they called it scrying, where one of them is looking into a crystal, supposedly dictating from an angel, like Ouija board style, and the other one is just writing this stuff down. And out of this, they created a body of work. And out of this body of work, they created a system of magic for invoking and evoking angels. Commenter says, I've seen the stars moving many times, which should not be possible, obviously. But something else too, when you look at many of these older religions, they all seem to be based on the same exact template. Like, you can find some interesting comparisons. Take a look at the, go Sunday, Monday, Tuesday through the week. You got the sun, moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. So we have these 7 celestial bodies encoded into our days of the week, and those all correspond with major deities that all the various religions seem to pay homage to, and they worship these various deities by the same iconography, even if it differs regionally, which seems to suggest that there's some kind of common origin. Strawberry Blind says, astrology chart is flat. Karen Sent Me Flaccid says, it's no different than Joseph Smith and the Golden Tablets. Good comparison. So Joseph Smith was also like John Dee. In fact, I wonder if he would have known of his work, because if you look into Joseph Smith, we're talking about the Mormon church. Joseph Smith was both a Freemason and a practitioner of planetary magic. They say he died with his Jupiter talisman in his pocket. So anyway, there's quite a lot there about Joseph Smith and his beliefs, but he was essentially a con man who led people on treasure hunts. I'm not sure how it works. I think the way it works is you stash some treasure, you have a couple successes, you sell a lot of tickets, you have a few, there's a ruse here. So here he is selling treasure hunts, and he claims that he's walking through the woods and he sees some frogs. He follows the frogs, and the frogs turn into angels. One of the angels' name is Moron, and Moron says, dig a hole. So he digs a hole, and he finds golden tablets, and he's told by the angel, hey, take these tablets and transcribe them, but don't let anybody see them. So he puts up a curtain, and he reads the tablets while his wife transcribes. That's the story. And I read the Book of Mormon. I tried to, and it's a brain killer. I was not impressed. The Quran is readable. Commenter says, stars are UFOs, in my opinion, aligned in form of the matrix around this realm. Well, you have the fixed stars and the wandering stars. And so the fixed stars, and this is like in the Bible, how they describe it, would represent the angels that are obedient to God's plan. They stay in their place. They know their roles. And then you have the wandering stars representing the fallen angels. These would be the planets that they follow on their own course. They don't follow any rules. Those would be the rebels. The other day I was talking about angels and satellites, how like literally everything about our modern concept of the world is templated off of the previous, the archaic. Like I said before, sin, virus, global warming, eschatology. The rockets are the modern obelisk. Well, the role of the angel, it's all about paranoia. The role of the angel is, yeah, you're being spied on. You can't see them, but they can see you. You may as well confess because they told God anyway. So you're always being watched by these hidden spies that can report to central authority. Same with satellites. You can't see them, but they can see you. They can measure your carbon footprint. They can tell if you have COVID, and they can snitch on you. So you have these snitches from up above. They've reinvented these. But I find it kind of interesting that when you look at the concept of the orbiting satellites, the ones that stay up there in perpetual motion, well, they're in perfect order with what? Gravity. They're not too far, and they're not too close. See, if they get too far away from the Earth, from the center of gravity, they will be flung into the outer darkness, which is where the angels are in the book of Jude when it describes the stars, the wandering stars, outer darkness, away from God. Now, what happens if they fall too close to the Earth? If they fall out of their fixed appointed place, if they disobey and they fall too close, well, they burn and they fall to the earth and they can't go back up. And that's the story of the fallen angels. If you read the book of Enoch, once they transgress, they're stuck until the end of time. So you have this idea that unless they remain in their perfect position, they can either become too worldly, which is what happened to the fallen angels. They fell for humans. They wanted human contact. And so they lost their position, never to regain it. And of course, the other ones would be those that stray too far. And I'm just suggesting that God, in this modern paradigm, is really gravity. That gravity is the thing that holds this together. That the wrath of God is expressed through global warming. That's your eschatology. The devil is definitely COVID. Sin is the virus. Your original sin that you're born with is your carbon footprint. But I think gravity is ultimately the magic that glues it all together. Okay, let's see. Lloyd says the planets are gods too. Well, sure, in a way. I mean, you think about it. Space is the modern concept of heaven. And what do you find if you go up to heaven? Well, that's where the gods are. And so isn't it interesting that the place where you go when you get into the obelisk to the heavens, because the obelisk is the sign, the symbol of the God of eternal life and resurrection. So you go into the rocket to go to heaven. And when you're up there, that's where the gods are, eternal life, sustainability. I mean, they have literally reinvented the paradise of old. I mean, just the other day, this is how you know it's fake. About a few weeks ago, we were making fun of this story from 1954 where an asteroid fell through a woman's house, through the roof, bounced off the radio, and hit her on the hip. And it was obviously fake. And I said, I'm so glad that we're not with the rest of the people who have to believe in these ridiculous stories. And they would never try this today because it wouldn't pass muster. People would mock it. They wouldn't believe it. Well, no, not so fast. It turns out, look, right after I mentioned it, 1 week ago, in fact, New York Post put out the story, man becomes millionaire when a meteorite busts through his roof. A 33-year-old man named Joshua of Indonesia has a casual relationship with death. He's a coffin maker. So you have a coffin maker. Business must be good, though, if COVID's real, right? But apparently for him it wasn't. So he was not doing too well, but luckily a $2 million, 4.5-pound meteor fell through his roof. He said it was warm. It was 4.5 billion years old. I don't know what bank you take it to. He says, I've always wanted a daughter. I hope this is a sign I'll be lucky enough. This life-changing occurrence has made him into a local celebrity. The meteor sent shockwaves through the scientific community. So he was reportedly paid the equivalent of 30 years of salary for his find, which he'll use to erect a church for his community. But this is part of the idea that, look, space is like heaven. Streets are paved with gold. They also say that it was warm to the touch afterward. Mooney Make says, has anybody watched the Tyson fight? I meant to. I meant to see how that went. Did he win? There's also a Jake Paul fight. If you don't know who Jake Paul is, that's the brother of Logan Paul, who hosted the Flat Earth Conference. And it apparently seems to be the case that Jake Paul has gone full-on auto-hoaxer, COVID denier, and mask refusenik. I don't know if it's authentic, if he really knows this stuff is all bogus, and he's just being paid to set a bad example, or if it's real. But, it was a tie. A Tyson fight was a tie. Paul won the fight. Okay, well, anyway, Logan Paul, I believe, was an agent. I believe that he was put there to help set the precedent that it's time to start censoring the masses, to ramp up the censorship. So he goes out and he starts making a career on YouTube out of tasering rats, filming dead people, running around naked, and doing a bunch of jackassy stunts. Specifically, achieving popularity with a young audience. So the danger was this guy can corrupt the youth. So then he becomes a flat earther and he takes over the Flat Earth Conference. And now they say this is too much. He has 20 million subscribers. Most of them are teenagers. And he's feeding them misinformation for fun and profit. So he was used as an example for why we should censor the internet. So I find it very interesting that his brother would now be taking part in the looting. I think that was in Arizona. But also calling, quote, 98% of the news fake. I mean, that's a pretty good statement. Look, Jake Paul calls COVID-19 a hoax. Claims 98% of the news is fake. Like, he's right about that. Could you be any more right? Maybe he's about 2% off, but that's about as right as you can be for being this popular. YouTuber turned boxer Jake Paul said Wednesday he believes COVID-19 is a hoax. And he believes 98%. See, that's giving the media too much credit. But I know where he's coming from. He said this during an interview with the Daily Beast. And the Daily Beast is always there to attack free thinkers. That's their gig. So it says, it's a controversial subject, but he says that the country needs to open up and go back to normal. When pressed, he said he believed it was time to move away from the lockdowns. He says, quote, there are people losing jobs, small businesses going bankrupt. There are millions of people unemployed. People are turning to alcohol and drugs to cope. This is the most detrimental thing to our society. COVID cases are less than 1%, and I think the disease is a hoax. Paul continued, 98% of news is fake. So how do we know what's actually real and what we're actually supposed to do? When the interviewer, Marlo Stern, pointed out that the virus killed 260,000 Americans, Paul said, so has the flu. He says, no one answers. Our leaders are failing us. No one answers. But I personally am not the type of person who's going to sit around and not live my life. Now, he got into trouble because he threw a house party at his mansion. And it looked like one of these speakeasies or something. So, make of it what you will. I think those are probably his authentic opinions. How can you not have these opinions? If any of this stuff was true, those guests at his house on Halloween would be dead, would they not? None of them wore masks. I don't think any of them believed it was real. Lean Dion says more suicides, apparently, than reported COVID-19 deaths. Well, I think it's pretty obvious now. Like if I threw a big party at my mansion and I invited 200 of my friends and we just disregarded the rules, and I would never do that, but let's just say I did, then I would feel responsible if even one person came down sick. And I find it noteworthy that not one person is suing Jake Paul for catching COVID. And they all partied at his house. Now, something else too. His brother was, again, a host of that Flat Earth conference. So maybe he just caught the Flat Earth mind virus unintentionally. I mean, that's their thinking. You know, I brought this up the other day with Virus of the Mind, the new science of the meme. Totally worth looking at, because this book, I think, Science of the Mind, I think this, and it's by the programmer Richard Brody. I think this is where they really started to get the public acclimated to the idea that there are such things as mind viruses, ideas that you can catch without consciously wanting them. Like, you can't just wake up one day and decide, okay, Allah's Akbar, I'm going to blow up a building. Like, no, you have to be radicalized into an ideology. But when it comes to something like COVID-19, no, you just catch it from somebody else, just by contact. You're just going about your regular business. You lick a doorknob that somebody else licked, and now you caught COVID. I mean, it's so easy to catch it. But that's the idea. They want us to think that you can catch viruses like this. So this is an idea that was really popularized too by Dawkins, Richard Dawkins. Evolutionists love this stuff. And I think the reason why is this. If they can get you to equate a piece of information with an actual virus that can be deadly in its consequences, then you can convince people that you need to treat it the same way. And that's why I said it's highly alarming that the pandemic treatment model is being applied to free speech. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're treating our speech like it's a virus. All right, let me move on. I got to bring this up once more. Victor Glover. This is being shared all over the internet. So this guy is inside of the Dragon capsule, and he decides to show us the Earth. You know, it's 2020. Is it about time you can finally debunk Flat Earth? All it would take would be one thing, and we've been saying this for some time. Take your cell phone. In fact, I said this like a month ago. Maybe they were listening. I said, take your iPhone to the space station and record the globe. Just put your hand up to the window and do it. How hard is that? Well, apparently it's impossible. Because what he does is he puts the camera up to the window incompletely. So you see a small sliver of the Earth, and then he flips the phone upside down really fast, so you think you've seen an entire ball. And then he says, I can't tell you what it looks like, it's too beautiful. I can't even describe it. It's like, and I'm looking at it as quite obviously, you're looking at an LED screen. An LED screen less than 20 feet away from him. Now watch how he turns it upside down. So he turns the phone upside down, and then he tries to keep it pressed up against the wall so we don't notice. And I think he goofed. They should have done a second take, because he pulls it back up to his face and he's sideways and then he's upside down. But, nice try. I mean, it's his first trip to space. First time space faker.
It is pretty amazing, though.
Nice LED screen. And I see a reflection here. I'm not sure what it is. It might be one of those Venetian masks. It's like Tom Cruise in a Venetian mask. I don't know. There's some shady reflection down here. But that is not a planet. That is not outer space. Where's the stars? Where's the space junk? Where's anything? And why are we only peeking through a sliver like you're locked in a janitor's closet? And why does he flip his phone? Come on. God. I mean, they need better special effects. It's pathetic. Does anybody believe it? Well, sadly, that video has been viewed 2.1 million times. And if I were to scroll through here, Let's see if anybody here doesn't believe it. Fantastic footage. Thanks for sharing. It's a beautiful planet. Okay, no skepticism yet. I always ask myself, does this beautiful and amazing land deserve all those wars? They call that the overview effect. Supposedly, when you've seen the Earth, it changes you. You no longer see boundaries between nations. You just see one big world. Brandon M says a floating disc. Yeah, it does look like a disc. It does not look spherical whatsoever. Okay, let's see what else we have. This guy here says, it looks so flat. Just kidding. It's a joke for the Trumpites who think the Earth is flat. No, it does look flat. It looks objectively flat. That looked like a screen. And this is what I mean when I say that people today are visually illiterate. They don't know the difference between real and fake. Okay, let's see. Sometimes I have a hard time believing that's what Earth looks like. Just wow. This guy says, pure jealousy. I am hating you right now. Congratulations on a spectacular accomplishment. What do you mean? He's on a Disney ride. That's not an accomplishment. I mean, what an amazing sellout here. And he could have flipped the phone. He could have showed us anything. This guy says here, that's not a sphere, that's a circle and it's two-dimensional. Where's the continent, says Ten Horse. Now that's a good question, because all you saw was a white cloud, blue ocean, no continents. Not seeing anything here. Nothing. Napping Lion says, from this video, I'm totally convinced now there's a God. Because if man can build a spaceship and travel that far, there must be a superior being out there. So according to Napping Lion, this is proof that God is in space. And I told you, space is the new heaven, and they believe it. This gives them a belief in a transcendent, safe space that they can have faith in. Nothing. Okay, someone here says, genuine question, how come we never see stars when people shoot videos or take pictures in space? There's a few different answers to that depending on who you ask. But quite obviously the reasons why they don't want to show you stars is the more they show you, the more likely you're going to see through it. So they have to keep everything minimalistic. And that's been the case with the space station for years. There are things you will never see those astronauts do. You know, they can't spin. Like they can't spin around, like as in turn around, puree. No ballerina moves on the space station. They'll get tangled. They'll literally hang from the harnesses. Aku says they're doing too much. It doesn't seem like it's worth the effort. Yeah, I want to know where the space junk is. There's 30,000 pieces of space junk orbiting this thing. 30,000? And we don't see one single little light. No, but we have debunked this thing ad nauseam. There's nothing else we can really say. The space station is a movie. It's a science fiction production. And it's been going on for several generations. And just so you know, they're about to upgrade. They're about to move people into enclosed safe spaces, gulags. They're moving people into sustainable habitats. That's what the space age is about. They want to get rid of the idea that you travel anymore. Traveling's a thing of the past. It's not sustainable. All right, I want to say thanks everyone for joining. The phone lines are open again. They were closed before. I had to catch up on a couple things, and I finally got around to turning them back on. So you can leave messages at 833-311-1984, and we will play those messages live. Also, if you want to get text message notifications, go to infiniteplainsociety.com and sign up. Text message notifications, email notifications, and of course, you can get notified if you join our Discord server. And if you join our Discord server, you'll get live notifications from the people there. And you can actually take part if you feel like it. We have a little bit of a collaborative project. If you haven't seen it, I may play it after. It's called a South Pole. And South Pole is pretty much our take on the Earth, at the brainwashed denizens of this plane. as seen from the perspective of outliers, like penguins in particular. So we're producing this weekly cartoon. We premiered the first episode on Thanksgiving. The next one will be out next Thursday. And the third episode, which is in production right now, will be out the following one. So anyway, thanks for joining. This is Space is Fake AF by Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms. One more thing before we go. I'm going to put a link in the chat here. A few people wanted to get onto that text message alert, so I just started that again. So I put
Have you ever looked away from Earth into the black void?
Because you can see the stars.
Oh yeah.
You know, and
we were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon.
It's not a black void. I mean, it's black, but there's all kinds of little polka dots.
Space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
There's more than stars. You can see planets. You can see moons.
you see the gas.
But don't let it say the sky was not the limit. You fly to the moon in another second. But we haven't been back since 1972. Destroyed all the papers and blew up the Challenger crew. Except for the twinsies. Space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
Look out into deep space away from the sun. It's the darkest light you can imagine.
Hey, space boy, you broke my rocket man heart. Where are the stars? Is it bright or is it dark? The vacuum of space, oh, the tomfoolery.
What happens if you get a leak on that? You have a leak.
Deep under my bubble.
It's hard to comprehend.
Space is fake AF.
Two little bitty O-rings.
Space is fake AF.
It's not what you think, homeboy.
Space is fake AF.
It's all just start doing this.